All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Seven Figures or Bust podcast. This is episode 93, the number one podcast in the world for growing your insurance business. Christian Brindle, Glenn Shelton, and we're back on a Monday morning with you guys with a lot to talk about. Man, do I have a lot to talk about. I don't know about you. I don't know what you have on your mind this morning, good sir.
Oh, a lot. There's something that I think the audience really needs to know too. And I think, starting this off sooner rather than later is probably better. Would you mind if I share my screen for a second here, sir?
I would not mind. Please do.
Okay, beautiful. All right, can you see my screen?
Now I can.
Okay, wonderful.
We're going to get automatically demonetized now. Jake, I need that muted. I demand that's muted so we don't get demonetized.
That dunk, you guys, just to fill the audience in really quickly here. If you missed last week's episode, Christian and I have a little wager going on the Clips Nuggets series right now. Loser has to pay the other person $100, has to wear an item from their daughter's closet, dealer's choice on exactly what that is. I have a tiara.
I already picked it. So you got tiara. I have
a tiara.
Bunny ears. I got bunny ears from Easter. That's what I will
Playboy bunny. Okay. Okay. And then Christian, being the one-upper he is, he also threw in there that you have to also be wearing an article of clothing from the winning team. So if I win, he has to buy something Nuggets and wear it. If he wins, I have to buy something from the Clippers and wear it. Saturday, I'm watching that game. I turn it on in the fourth quarter, and they're up 20. Nuggets are up 20. I'm sending texts to Christian. I'm like Nikola Jokic meme. I'm smiling. I'm having a great time. And then slowly the lead starts to bleed away in the fourth quarter, and I start to get really nervous. If you know the NBA at all, when a team goes down 3-1 in the series, it's a 95% loss rate. It's a death sentence. It is literally
unless you're prime LeBron, you're not coming back.
Yeah, it's over. It's over. And so to see that get that close to the end and the way it ends, allegedly that's the closest buzzer beater in basketball history because it was so close to when he let go of his fingers on that dunk and the ball is going through the hoop. So part of history this weekend. Christian and I were right there. So it's going to be a great series. I'm so excited to continue to follow this.
It was a great weekend of playoffs. I watched a couple of games, didn't watch a majority of them, but all of them I went back and watched the highlights, and I was like, man, there's so many good series in this first round. I don't remember a first round in recent memory with this many good, really strong competitive series. They're not all competitive, but even the ones that aren't competitive, like the games seem close.
I saw you confess your love for Anthony Edwards last night.
I love Anthony Edwards.
Very romantic.
Oh my gosh. I watched that game and I was so sure they were going to lose. I was just positive of it, and then he was a gangster in that game. He's pushing LeBron on defense, he
was all over. It was wild.
He's hitting these shots with like Reeves in his face and all these different defenders in his face. And it's just like the type of shots he was hitting at the end were like these, plopping it on the counter and being like, what? What now? What are you going to do about it? And I was just like, it's like hang your scrotum out type of shots.
Okay. Last thing about the playoffs. And then we'll move on. End of the Knicks-Pistons game. Was that a foul? Was that not a foul? Thoughts?
I think it was probably a foul.
I think it was a foul. I don't understand because I'm reading a lot of like the commentary after the fact. They're making it sound like when the game's over, they can't review a shot like that. I don't know. I feel like that should have been reviewed. He should have gotten those free throws, and that series should be tied 2-2. Heart goes out to all those Detroit fans. That's a tough loss. 3-1.
Those two shots at the end from Cat.
Oh my!
Some of the most ridiculous shots I've ever seen go in. Oh,
he had someone literally hand in his face like this. He's behind the backboard. I'm just like, that's in the level of and he swishes it perfectly.
For how much criticism he gets, he's a gamer. You know what I mean? He's a freaking gamer.
I love him. He's having an incredible playoffs run so far.
He does some things like, he'll foul at the worst times, like at the end of the game, sometimes to like lose a game, a tight game. Like he did it in this game too. He almost went to overtime because he picked up his 5th foul for nothing. It's like a dumb foul. Like he'll be like, oh, like flop all over someone. And he doesn't play defense. So like there's things that to hate about him, but like when he's on and he's hitting shots like that, like he's really good. He's really good.
He is.
Okay, so a lot of things to get into in this episode. We're going to be talking about Anthem suppressing non-DSNP plans and the Centera news in Virginia. For those of you in Virginia, thought we kind of talk about those together because certainly timely about those things happening at the same time.
Yes.
Wanted to review an article from Bill Gates talking, not from Bill Gates, but
Billy. Little Bill, Big Billy.
I found it kind of fascinating that what Big Billy was talking about in said article. Before we get into those things, though, man, I wanted to get your opinion on something. This whole Shannon Sharpe thing, I can't stop listening to all the commentary about it. Like, this is what I can't help but thinking about, right? Like, you become extremely successful, which he has become, right? He was a Hall of Fame football player, made a lot of money, has made, from all intents and purposes, a lot more money post-football than he had been playing football. He's on Fox Sports for years, primetime show. He does this podcast that becomes wildly successful. Rumor has it he's about to sign a $100 million deal before this happened. It's on ESPN a couple days a week on the #1 show. He's everywhere.
Yes.
The story is he's 54 years old at the time of this happening. He meets a 19-year-old OnlyFans model in the gym. And he's single, never been married. You know what I mean? They start having a romantic relationship. Now she's suing him for assault, SA charges. I don't want to say it and get demonetized.
Right.
His attorney came out and said that they offered a settlement of $10 million to keep this from coming out, and it was rejected.
Wow. That's insane.
He's been removed from ESPN.
I didn't hear that part. That's a huge settlement offer.
So I say this all to say, right? Like, I was listening to a podcast this morning as I was at the gym, and it was Andrew Schultz and Charlemagne the God. Have you seen their podcast at all?
Yeah.
Really good. They're talking about this situation, and they're talking about how if you're in your 50s, you should be happily married, couple of kids, maybe even grandkids, depending. Like, you're at home. You're not finding yourself in these situations with teenage to early 20-year-old girls. You know what I'm saying? Like, they leaked, I don't know if you heard some of the audio they leaked. They leaked audio, and there's him on the phone talking about choking her out. Multiple audio clips, not just one, multiple.
Yeah, I had not heard any of the audio clips on this.
So, like, okay, is that right? Are you just asking for it? Are you out of your mind if you become massively, wildly successful and you're chasing around these young girls like that? You got to be asking for it, right? Like,
yeah. I think, a 30-year age gap. I mean, that's insane. Yeah, only Bill Belichick's allowed to do that.
Him too. Him too. Like, give it 5 years, and there will be allegations up against Bill Belichick coming out asking for $10-20 million in a
Not
settlement.
Bill.
It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. I have no doubt in my mind.
I mean, I think so. So, I mean, to really weigh in on this, like, to say that you have to be 50 years old and married, right? If you're successful, like, I think that's silly to say that, like, if they really went that far with
Okay,
their argument.
at the very least, though, if you're not going to be married, at the very least, be chasing girls that are in their
Your
30s
age.
or 40s.
Yeah.
Or, like,
Yeah.
you can be 55. He's 56 right now.
He's 56 right now.
Right
Whoa.
now. So you're pushing 60 and you're chasing 20-year-old OnlyFans models. Like,
Yeah.
come
Yeah.
on. Like,
Yeah.
I have a hard time feeling sorry for you. He got removed from his ESPN job. He stepped down, but it came out that Disney was about to fire him, so he wanted to go down with some dignity.
Yeah, Disney's not going to be touching that with a 10-foot pole.
It's just interesting to me, right? Like, I don't know. It seems reckless to me. It's very reckless to put yourself in that situation if you're successful like that. Like, you and I are not on the level success-wise of a Shannon Sharp or Fame or anything like that.
Hey, speak for yourself, okay?
But if I was single, I would be thinking about that. I really would. I would be like, I'm going to be extorted. You know what I mean?
That's true. I mean, and these stories, you do see these extortion level events happen all the time to some really successful people. And it sucks to think it's almost akin to like having paparazzi in your face 24/7. You know, you hit this level of fame and wealth, and these people. That would drive me nuts for sure. I know that. Like, I definitely feel for celebrities that like get stalked by paparazzi and like they can't even leave their house without someone trying to grab a picture of them. Like,
yeah,
I would definitely lose my mind. I feel like if something like that were to happen. So it's a whole different ball game, at the top.
Yeah, I just think, this show's about success and becoming successful. Like, if you're successful, you become massively successful, and you're single, you got to be smarter than that. You got to watch your ass a little bit. That's what I take away from that story.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Here's another thing that happened this weekend that kind of fits into this success conversation too. Is so Deion Sanders' son, who allegedly, I don't know if you followed this story at all, but allegedly, I think he could have potentially played another year at Colorado. So Deion Sanders became the head coach at Colorado. Both of his sons played on the team. His oldest son was on defense. It was his senior year, so he had to go. He couldn't play college anymore. I can't remember. Maybe he did have to. I thought he was only a junior, so maybe he had one more year actually. But allegedly, he was going to be a number 1 pick. He was going to be picked in the first round. I didn't feel like he was necessarily like that status. A lot of people thought he was kind of riding his dad's coattails. Deion Sanders, obviously, very well-known name.
Bronny James player. Part 2?
Okay, no, I wouldn't go that far because I think I would say he has more talent, and I can't think of his first name right now, but Deion Sanders' son, who is a quarterback, he ends up not going until like the 5th round. He's like 144th pick. And a lot of people say they didn't want the kind of that same, what you're seeing happen in LA with this LeBron running the team, bringing his son on. They didn't want the drama or the PR around having Deion Sanders' son on your team, even though he was talented to a degree. It's hard to necessarily say, like, is he the number 1 quarterback coming out of college right now? But it kind of became this whole thing of like, is your dad's success hindering you almost in this scenario? Like if your dad wasn't Deion Sanders and you just played football, would you have gotten picked earlier? It's an interesting dilemma of, again, kind of this success conversation. What do you think about that?
Because unless he's just all-time Hall of Fame great, he probably will always be remembered as Deion Sanders' son. Because Deion Sanders is all-time great, right? He's probably the greatest cornerback ever in
two-way
the
player.
History of football. Yeah, two-way player, larger than life personality. He's not like this type of guy that just disappeared when he retired.
No, he's in the news like every week.
All the time.
Deion Sanders said something. There's an interview clip, a lot this or that. So there's a lot of baggage almost that comes with it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I think it just means I feel like you saw this with Michael Jordan's kids too, because they played basketball. They weren't good enough to go pro, kind of thing, right? I remember John Stockton's son played for a college, and he was really closely analyzed, even though he didn't really play. And I feel like if you're the child of a star like that, I think there's almost a lot of pressure for you to be better than dad, to be better than dad. Otherwise you're always going to be so-and-so's son. It's interesting. Very interesting. Good luck with that.
Good luck.
Okay. I want to,
by the way, he got drafted by the Browns too, which I thought was hilarious. The Cleveland Browns.
The dog pound. The dog pound itself. What a storied franchise are the Cleveland
Browns. That's the one thing I would think about watching the draft. These kids, they get pulled to some random city in the U.S. that it could be the Giants. It could be, you could go to New York or you end up in Cleveland. Hey, it worked for LeBron, I guess. That was his ticket. But
worked for LeBron, not Johnny Manziel, but who's counting?
Deshaun Watson, Johnny Manziel.
Baker
the last
Mayfield.
decade of quarterbacks in Cleveland is just, you could write a documentary on that.
All right, let's shift gears into this Bill Gates article. I found it super interesting. So the number one thing I hear about when it comes to AI from agents in particular, but also just people, is fear of it replacing jobs, right?
Yes.
Hear about that constantly. Now, whether that's a reasonable fear or not is, I'll leave that to the listener to kind of determine for themselves. But I noticed this article come up the other day, and I was reading it, and I'm like, how interesting is this? Trying to share my screen. I don't know if it's working. I don't think it's working. I don't think you can see it, right?
I cannot see it.
Okay. It doesn't want to do it. What do we do? Okay.
You want to try sending the link to me?
Yeah, let's do it. Because I've clicked it 6 times now and it won't share.
Throw it in our Teams. Throw it in our Teams chat. This episode is not sponsored by Microsoft Teams because Microsoft Teams sucks. Speaking of Bill Gates. You send it to me?
Okay. I'm working on it.
This might be a good time to talk about the episode's actual sponsor. Guys, episode 93 is sponsored by none other than the 7-Figure Medicare Agent Summit in Salt Lake this June 22nd to the 24th. You do not want to miss this event. We are coming up on the last few days of our ticket discount. So right now, if you head over to 7figureMedicareAgentSummit.com, or you can just go to 7figure.com, SEVENFIGURE.com, you can pick up a ticket for the summit, 30% off. So save $150, make your way to the summit this summer and get the latest information on what's going on in the Medicare industry. You can also network with like-minded agents and agency owners, speak with some great sponsors and vendors that we'll have there as well. plus 2 days of a main stage with some of the industry leaders and top sales producers sharing some incredible content and knowledge that they've picked up over the years. You do not want to miss this, trust me. Also, limited sponsorship opportunities are still available. So if you are wanting to get your name, brand, company, IMO, agency, whatever it is you've got going on, you want to get in front of more Medicare agents, this is a fantastic opportunity to do so. We're anticipating potentially up to 400 people at this year's event. So head over to sevenfigure Medicare Agent Summit.com, and we would love to see you there.
Do you have said link, good sir?
I have said link, and picture of Big Billy has filled my screen.
Big Billy. All right. I'm fascinated to kind of go through this topic. Now, I will start by saying Bill Gates is somebody that is probably his name is more tied to conspiracy theories today than anybody that I'm aware of. He's definitely a polarizing figure today. When we were growing up, consistently the richest man in the world, co-founder, right, of Microsoft. Whoa. Super Whoa. Accomplished.
Big Bill.
Big Bill. Okay, so let's go down to the headline of this article. So he says, Bill Gates predicts 2-day work week. Go back up. I can't read that fast.
Sorry.
Bill Gates predicts 2-day work week is coming in just 10 years as AI will replace humans for most things. So we'll start off reading, go through it a little bit, right? We might
should we start working less now? Should we prep for this? Should we cut to 2 days now?
I don't know. It might be. Bill says it's time. Bill says it's time. Speaking of which, I bought a good bit of Microsoft shares this morning. I dumped my Tesla stock finally.
Oh, you finally took that L.
No, I ended with a 42% gain.
Hey, there you go.
It wasn't the 120% gain I was at 6 months ago. But who's counting? Who's counting? But yeah, I put some into Microsoft stock because I was down about 8-9%. I'm like, buy the dip.
Rooting for the Clippers, pretending you're Steve Ballmer, buying Microsoft stock. Now we're talking about Bill Gates. Is there something? Do you need to disclose anything publicly right now? Are you like a partial? Do you have partial ownership beyond the stock that I don't know about? Like, what is going on?
Working on it.
All right.
We're seeing what we can do. Okay, so this topic's super interesting to me because, I feel like we talked about this on the show before about. We talked about this the other day about like low-level jobs where there's low effort being put in. Like, I told the story of me going to the car wash and the guy on his phone that was supposed to be guiding me in. Talked about cashiers that just, they would rather be stabbing you than checking you out.
Right.
And how those jobs potentially are probably the first to go. As long as those jobs are around, you're probably pretty safe as an agent. But anyway, so article starts off by saying, now here's the other thing to think about with this. Microsoft, which Bill still is a huge shareholder in, he's not involved in running the company anymore. I think he's still on the board of directors, but Microsoft, was an early investor in ChatGPT. There's tons of AI projects and investments in companies that they have either spun up or invested in themselves. So they are financially motivated by AI working out in a big way. Let's start off by saying that. So is Bill.
For sure. For sure.
All right. So it starts off by saying we might soon see the end of the traditional 5 to 9-5 schedule as Microsoft founder Bill Gates predicts that advancements in AI could replace humans enough to allow for a 2-day work week. What does that look like? Let's start off by talking about that. What does that look like? Is it 2-day work week with the same salary? Is it the same salary of a 40-hour work week? Like, what does this look like if you're for a company?
In the future, you work on Saturday, Sunday, you work on the weekends, and you have the entire week off. The weekend is now the weekdays. Monday to Friday. you don't work anymore. And the pay's actually gone up because of inflation. It's efficiency, baby. You're going to make 3 times more, work 2 days a week, and ride your pet robot anywhere you need to go. Okay?
Here's what I would think.
Beautiful.
And he's not going to say this, right? Because cause an uproar. But realistically, if that is the case and companies only needed people for 2 days, you probably literally have to get 2 or 3 jobs and work 2 days a week at each job because your pay is not going to change, right? I would imagine. Okay.
Unless it's like a legit UBI situation, like we're talking about the really extreme type of parts of this conversation, right? Is universal basic income, where some have suggested that it will get to a point that AI and robots and automation will become such a fixture of our economy that there will not be enough jobs or opportunities to actually earn a livable wage because so much will no longer be a human oriented process. So if that's the case, then maybe you would make the same and only work 2 days a week, but
not from your company, from the government filling in the
correct.
difference.
Correct. Yeah. Yes. In that situation, yes.
Okay, so let's jump down to as reported by Fortune, Bill Gates revealed during an interview on the Tonight Show, starring Jimmy Fallon, can't tell those two apart, that AI will eventually make intelligence free to everyone. Oh, that's interesting. Using doctors and teachers as an example. Oh my God, doctors. And would lead to people working far reduced hours. It's kind of profound because it solves all of these specific problems, like we don't have enough doctors or mental health professionals, but it brings with it so much change. What will jobs be like? Should we just work 2 or 3 days per week? So I love the way it'll drive innovation forward, but I think it's a little bit unknown whether we will be able to shape it. So that's interesting, right? What are your thoughts on this?
I think that's the whole. Is it the whole article? No,
yeah.
There's some
well,
more.
No, there's more. There's more.
Talks about AGI. Yeah. So what's interesting about this conversation is, and so I'm gonna go back to watching the playoffs this weekend. So I'm watching some of the playoffs and some of the commercials coming on during the playoffs. There were some car company commercials, and they were brand new commercials because they slanted them towards this whole tariff situation. Talking about being made in the USA. We have several cars in our lineup that aren't affected by tariffs because they're made here. And so, this whole idea that we're trying to develop more here in the United States, become more independent, more manufacturing, more jobs. I think that if we try to really push hard in this direction, I think what capitalism will most likely solve for is how to use technology like AI and robotics to keep manufacturing things at the cost you can get them now overseas. I don't foresee a future where we're funneling people into factories here in the US and getting the cost down at the same time. That doesn't make any sense. Where's the math on this? When you look at the average wage in the US, you're paying someone $20 an hour to take my order at McDonald's. And you're telling me we're going to jam factories full of these $20 an hour workers and we're going to get things for the same cost. There's been decades of infrastructure put into place overseas to get these different items. It could be a computer, it could be your phone, it could be whatever it is, where they have the entire vertically integrated process from, they're literally, getting the components, putting it together in the factory, shipping this end product to us here overseas. So I think most likely a lot of what he's saying is correct. Here's the one thing that I think I haven't seen yet that seems further up. Have you seen like the Tesla robots? Like the actual like robot? You haven't seen those.
No.
You haven't seen. Okay.
No.
You should check them. Have you seen anything like the Boston Dynamics robots?
Yes, I have seen that.
Yeah, I showed you that one a long time ago. We did a taco. Yeah, we did a Taco Tuesday way back in the day on that.
Throwback.
That was a long time ago. That was years ago. So since then, the technology's only gotten better. What I think would be like my canary in the coal mine on a lot of this would be, when is a robot going to be able to come into my house and start to do? Yeah, there you go. So Tesla's doing it now, very similar to Boston Dynamics. It's getting better. But is it gonna like
catching balls?
Right. Yeah, it's getting better for sure. But when is a robot gonna be able to walk into my house and be able to like cook for me, do my chore? Yes. When is that? When are we gonna get there? That's when I think we'll get down to like a 2-day work. That's when we should all be scared for sure.
Yeah.
I don't think ChatGPT as an LLM is an extinction level event. I think it's going to be the combination of like super advanced AI and robotics. And now we're getting to the point where, yeah, we need UBI. We're only working 2 days a week, but.
This episode of the 7 Figures or Bust podcast is brought to you by Everything Senior Insurance. Guys, if you're looking for an FMO in 2025 to be a partner with you and really support the overall growth of your business, Everything Senior Insurance is the one-stop shop to allow you to get plugged in with great resources. Whether it's ACA contracts you're looking for, whether it's Medicare contracts you're looking for, whether it's final expense and life contracts that you're looking for, Everything Senior Insurance has got you covered. We provide a free CRM in 7-figure CRM to all of our agents that meet the proper requirements on their contracting and have enough contracts with us. We provide discounted leads with Lead Heroes, discounted virtual assistants with Hire Heroes, and we provide just year-round support to just be there and help you out in your business, as well as fantastic training. Glenn, what do people need to know about Everything Senior Insurance, the FMO?
At Everything Senior Insurance, we've really combined all of our resources to create an FMO that can be a true one-stop shop for a senior insurance agent. Most FMOs have only maybe one resource or even no resources beyond offering that contract. We want to provide value to you as an agent to help you grow your book of business. Or if you want to create an agency, we want to help you grow your agency. And there's so many resources that we have put together to really help you grow your business. So if you are looking for a true partnership, someone that will invest in your business, please reach out to Everything Senior Insurance. We would love to help you grow.
Thanks for listening to this message. And now back to the show. Something similar. That he said eventually that's where we would go, 2 or 3 day work week kind of thing. But and here we are. Hasn't that 10 years later, it hasn't really happened that way. So just kind of an interesting thing. Let's pivot into the main topic today, because I do want to spend as much time on it as we can, because I think it's a biggie. So for those of you that did not hear, appreciate you guys patiently waiting for the main topic today. Last week. Now there were some rumblings this was coming. I had kind of heard some whispers about it in the previous weeks. But you never know what whispers actually are reality or gossip, or you just don't know. But Anthem came out and said, essentially, I'll kind of read the details of what they said. So they said, Elevance Health has announced that they will be moving away from non-DSNP plans outside of Florida to non-marketable and suppressing them from enrollment platforms as of 5/1. So my understanding is all regular Medicare Advantage plans that are not DSNP plans in 49 states, Anthem's not in all 50 states, but they're probably in, off the top of my head, 35, 40 something states, something like that. It's not that they're non-commissionable, but we saw this in last AEP where certain carriers made certain plans suppressed on enrollment platforms like Sunfire and Connecture, meaning you could not do a electronic enrollment. You had to do a paper app and fax that bitch in. Fax that son of a bitch in. you know. And they're doing that to make it harder to enroll people into those plans. Why? Because they don't want enrollments into those plans. That's what it comes down to. So Anthem's moving in this direction. Really, probably the first carrier that I've seen do it this boldly. That's a national carrier anyway, nationwide, excluding Florida. And the only plans that you'll be able to do, the same way that you've always been able to do them electronically, is DSNP plans. And then along the same lines, around the same time frame, there's a regional carrier that's owned by a hospital system in Virginia called Centera. We've never picked up the contract. We've looked at it several times. Came down to the conclusion we didn't want to go through the trouble. For us as an FMO to pick up a regional carrier, for those of you that don't know, it's a freaking pain in the ass for us. We have to learn their systems. We have to get contracted. We have to do the certs. We typically won't do it unless we have to. Now, there's a lot of regional carriers we picked up because we've had to. Carriers in Florida, Texas, California. Utah, of course.
Colorado?
Yeah. There's a couple in Colorado. Yeah. Denver Health, for example. Kaiser Permanente.
I know the FMO side. Come on. Yes. Come on, bro.
Yes. Silly me. But anyway, so Centera comes out, basically says at the end of this year, they're pulling the plug on their Medicare Advantage plans, and everyone's going to be canceled at the end of the year. And you're just kind of giving everybody a heads up, kind of similar to what Mutual of Omaha did last year with their PDPs, kind of a similar time of the year, being like, hey, just a heads up, we're done at the end of this year. Super, super interesting. Of course, it causes a lot of panic in the eyes of agents. So I have a lot of thoughts about this, a ton of opinions on kind of what's going on. But what are your first reactions when you see these types of things going on?
I mean, this feels like more of the same. I'm over here just eating. Taco Tuesday was built around the idea that I just wanted to eat on camera, and sometimes I continue that fantasy right here on the show. I would assume this is continued fallout from the Inflation Reduction Act. We've talked about this before. We never once have you or I said, after this AEP, everything's going to be normal again, or stuff like this will completely stop. Again, these carriers have to make a profit. This is capitalism. They're not running a charity. This isn't, national health care. They're trying to make a profit. That is their goal. They actually, I believe by law, they have to make a profit after a certain amount of time. I know with the Medicare supplement companies, they're allowed to run at a negative for like 2 years, but then year 3, they have to be profitable. So, as a Chicken Little agent, and I know there's a lot of you out there, you see these headlines, especially, I'm sure if you're in, like, to me, Centra, right? Whatever this carrier in Virginia is. Centera. I'm sorry. Centera. To me, Centera, not being local to me, or, we don't even have that contract as an example, like Christian said, that doesn't even really hit on my radar. But I'm sure if you are local, or if you have been doing business with Centera, that's probably a really big deal for you. So, this is where I think diversification comes in, and this is where kind of some risk management of being an actual broker, right? Not having all of your eggs in one basket. Obviously, it can also come down to the situation of, like, if your clients really fit in with them, and you're almost kind of forced to. I've seen that happen too. But in that situation, you have to be ready to roll with the punches and be ready to roll your clients over to someone different, So this is not my gut reaction is, though, my bottom line here from my initial reaction on this is like, this is not an extinction level event. This is not a red flag event. This isn't something where, I'm flying my US flag at half mast tomorrow because, I think a tragedy just happened. I think this is probably just more of the same, right? What are your thoughts?
So we have Anthem as like one of our carriers. So I want to tread a little lightly in what I'm about to say. We do a lot of business with Anthem. They're probably, from an MA perspective, one of our top 6 or 7 carriers in terms of overall production for the agency. And so that being said, I think they're in trouble. I think they haven't really probably adjusted as well as they could have with some of these new rules in terms of the Inflation Reduction Act and other things going on that have affected their profitability and really all Medicare Advantage carriers' profitability. And so I think they're coming out of AEP, coming out of Q1, seeing the numbers, seeing their balance sheets, seeing everything that's going on. And I think they're like, okay, oh, damn, we got to do something. We're really only being profitable like we want to be on D-SNP business, so let's suppress everything else for a while and stop the bleeding a little bit. Let's focus on D-SNP business for a while. I think it has more to do with Anthem than it does anything else. I don't think it's I think anytime you see massive changes like this that affect the industry as a whole, like the Inflation Reduction Act did, anybody that says you don't want to point to that, like, how do you not point to that? Like,
right.
I just don't understand, like it's a huge domino effect for carriers because it impacts what they have to pay out in claims significantly. And if the carriers are not adjusting their benefits accordingly, right? That's why we saw a vast majority of carriers last year during AEP, this past AEP in the fall, their benefits changed wildly, a lot of them. The smart carriers were making gradual changes the last 2 AEPs. So like some of the big name carriers, they were doing some reductions the AEP before and then a little bit more reductions the previous AEP, but it didn't feel like it was like all at once. They kind of saw this coming. And I feel like from what it seems like to me, I don't think Anthem did a good job.
You saw this coming out the gate.
Yeah.
You did a video about the Inflation Reduction Act pretty much from day one when it got passed, and so it's like, it's not like this was some, like no one could have seen what was coming, right? I mean,
yeah,
clearly the writing was on the wall.
If I can predict this, and I didn't get all my predictions right, but like there are some things I couldn't have foreseen happening. Like, for example, last AEP, right at the last second, CMS offers a massive subsidy to PDP carriers to keep PDPs from going to hell in a handbasket, right? Like, I couldn't have predicted that from happening. But for the most part, vast majority of my predictions kind of came true. If I can see this coming, and I'm not in these meetings, I'm not an actuarial, I'm not inside of these carriers. Right. I got a lot of connections, right? I'm extremely plugged in, but I just know the game. I know the industry, right? I'm just kind of paying attention, being like, oh, carrier has to pay more money. 1 + 1 = 2 kind of thing.
Right. That's right. My same logic too. One thing I want to mention here, there's a comment on the stream I want to read. And I want to preface this too. What I was saying earlier, I kind of double down on it. I don't know the local Virginia market really at all. So before you get into this, yes,
because we have agents in Virginia, so I've traveled to Virginia to work with some of our agents. Like I know the market quite well. The areas of Virginia that we work in, that our agents have worked in historically, the last 3 to 5 years, the big 3 carriers mostly were Anthem, Centera a little bit as like the local regional carrier, and Humana. Humana kind of fell off a cliff a little bit this past AEP in that area. I want to say it was Centera Hospitals. They fell out of network with Centera Hospitals, and then I want to say they worked it out and got it fixed before the end. I don't remember. Someone in Virginia can correct me on that. But anyway, like those were the three big carriers. So like if Humana really changes in a bad way over the years there, they lose some market share. Anthem becomes suppressed. Doesn't mean you can't do the apps. I want to preface my comments by saying that you can still do the enrollments, just paper, son. And then Centera's done. That makes that area really tough because like you have
you
have other
basically
carriers
just
there,
stole
but they
my
don't have.
thunder,
You have other carriers there. You just don't
okay.
have much of a network with like the
so
UHCs of the world, the Aetnas of the world.
You came in and cut me at my knees right as I was about to share this person's comment. That was essentially the comment. That's okay.
I didn't even read it.
No, that's fine. Nope. You know what? I've got to go. Actually, I've got to go. I'm gonna sign off here.
I'm sorry.
Christian's gonna close out. Final thoughts. No,
let's read the comment. Let's read the comment.
No, I love that because I was joking about I'm learning a lot on the FMO side. I don't have, Christian's been doing this for so long. He knows these like regional situations like this on other sides of the country.
Not all.
But essentially what you just said was the comment here on the stream is they're talking about how, the 1-2 punch here of Anthem with Centera in their local market. And that these two carriers are pretty much the only plans that doctors accept in our area.
Well, how about that? Well, funny. I'm reading it now.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I should have. No. I think it's amazing that you were able to, without saying the way you phrased it. I'm like, man, he must be reading this comment. But
no,
I think that's incredible. That just shows it's proof of your knowledge. That's how I view it. But
we also have quite a few clients there. Like we had most of them on Humana plans last year. For some reason, we have a buttload of TRICARE clients internally in Virginia, and they had these Humana plans, these Humana no drug PPO plans, and we had to move a lot of them because the doctors fell out of network. So, like,
you think it's because it's close to DC? There's just a lot of like government people around there, maybe.
Yeah. There's a lot of like government people. There's a lot of veterans out that way. Just kind of interesting.
Let me keep going here. So on this comment here. So Virginia also just became a birthday rule state. I know there is a silver lining. Help me see it. HDG maybe? High deductible G, I guess is what also a really good friend just lost her husband and has offered me her book of business for a great price.
I would buy it.
Yeah. I'm sorry to hear that your friend lost her husband. That's really sad.
That's awful.
What a great opportunity for you if you can, and it sounds like you're helping them at the same time too. So Christian, I think jumped right on that.
I don't know what a great price means, but I could maybe even use this as a negotiating tactic and be like, do you think I can get it for even a little bit less? Like, this is a tough market right now.
Yeah.
Like, here's the thing. If I'm in that market and let's say Anthem's the only carrier left that has any of the doctors or providers, I'm going to ride with the paper apps, baby, because other agents won't.
What about SUP though? What about HDG? What about looking at doing maybe more SUP than you normally would? Is that a potential solution here?
Could be. I mean, I feel like, especially in a birthday rule state, I just feel like with existing SUP clients and people that want the med SUP because they're going to be there, you need a solution for that. Let's talk about that. But I do not believe that people are just not going to want MAs because of this. Maybe some, maybe like the hospitals are like pushing out their propaganda, be like MAs are bad. Could be. But, if let's say my number one carrier in that market that has the network still is Anthem, 90% of agents are not going to write them. They're just going to not know what to do because they don't want to do the paper apps. Do the paper apps. Mail
Well,
them. Mail them back.
The one thing too, I'm thinking of call centers aren't going to start mailing out paper apps.
Like
No way.
It might be a little bit more work for you per app, but think about all the opportunity you can have to come in there and take a ton of business away from people because you're willing to do paper apps. The plans haven't changed. You still have the networks. You can still write them. It's just a more pain in the ass to do it. But like for my first 5 years of my career, all I did.
I know that's what I was thinking. That's what I'm thinking as we're sitting here. I'm like, I used to only know there was no e-app when I started writing insurance, and now when agents are forced to do paper, they're like, industry's failing.
I can't write business. So
we didn't have e-apps.
Here's what you do. Even if you're doing it over the phone, you send out 2 pages, signature page, scope. To be compliant, send the scope out first. But send them the scope out first. But before the 48-hour rule came back, this is what we were doing. We were setting them together. But anyway, send out the signature pages. You put a sticker on them that points where to sign. Right?
Yes. Yeah, I love those.
You put a return envelope in there that's pre-addressed to you, throw a stamp on it, and you do the rest of the app over the phone. And you fill in what you need to and fax it in. I'd look at this as an opportunity because how many people are going to go through that?
Whoa!
If you have an assistant, your assistant can help you fill in the apps, help you mail things out.
Yeah.
Now for subs, let's talk about subs. I haven't looked at the subs in that market for a while, so I'm a little fuzzy. I'd be curious if your innovative Plan G is an option out there with Physicians Mutual. That's kind of like your best of both worlds, high deductible. I know there's people that are super bullish on high deductible plans. I just never have liked them that much. I'm sorry. I just don't like it.
We're trying to save med sub, even if it means writing HDG, okay?
If I had a decent rate for innovative Plan G, that might be an option. Maybe some HDG can fit in there. I don't know, but
let me pitch on this really fast. We're getting towards the top of the hour. Let me pitch on this. I'm kind of looking at this as a really interesting opportunity for this agent. And I actually love this question. Guys, thank you for commenting on the stream. I love getting your guys' feedback, your interaction, your comments like this. So I'm looking at this as there's a huge shakeup in the state market right now, right? I mean, clearly, things are getting shuffled around. And I think the average agency, whether it's a call center, an agency, a local agent, the average person is going to be, retract, get out, don't touch, stop writing business here temporarily. That's going to be the average person's reaction. If you can 180 this and you acquire your friend's book, even if you don't have the capital to put up for that book, negotiate some type of deal, take the book. You take that book over, you continue to grow your book and service it. You write anything you have to write, even if it's something where you're not really going to get a decent commission on. You take advantage of birthday rule, you write the high deductible plans, you do the paper apps. All of a sudden, when the pendulum swings back, right? And it will. Mm-hmm. Some carrier will come in and take this business for sure. It's not like the carriers are all pulling out like no Medicare Advantage is available in Virginia for the future. This is a temporary thing, is it not? Would you say, Christian?
What I would think about with this, I'm going to wrap this into my final thoughts. But I think about my home state. So when I started, we have a major hospital system here that kind of reminds me of Centera a little bit. The vast majority of doctors, providers, hospitals, clinics, etc., are part of this hospital system. There's other hospitals, but they're not the same, right? So for most Medicare Advantage carriers, if you don't have this hospital system in the network, you can't compete in a real way. It's just kind of the law of the land.
Right.
So that's kind of what it is with Centera, right? In your area. When I came in, there were 3 carriers that had this hospital system and 6 that didn't. So you might expect, and now one of the carriers was owned by the hospital system. Sound familiar? Yeah, because of the Centera plans, right? The other one, I won't say the name, national monster carrier. They're very together. Very, very together is what I'll say. And then there was a Blue Cross company that had it. Blue Cross company, though, had high premiums, weren't as competitive. So really the two of the three were competitive. The other carriers didn't have the hospital system. Fast forward to today, now you have 6 or 7 carriers, I think 7 in our state, something like that. 5 of the 7 have the hospital system now. They've all figured out a way to contract with the hospital system, and that hospital system always was extremely they doubled down on saying, we will never contract with this carrier. We'll never contract with that carrier. I remember at one point in time in their offices, they had big signs that said, we will never take anything from this carrier. A very green carrier. They said, like, it was a real thing. And guess what? They're in the network now for that carrier.
Hey!
So, again, I couldn't agree more with what Glenn said. Pendulum swings back and forth. And that would kind of be my final thoughts on this episode too, right? Like, I really, truly believe this has a lot more to do with how Anthem has handled their adjustments due to all the changes going on than it has anything to do with a mass big concern in the Medicare Advantage market. Centera being a local carriers are not going to survive as well as national carriers with all this shifting and changes. So
100%.
Again, pendulum swings back and forth. We talked about this with Final Rule. Remember the dummy that said there was FMOs closing their door the day Final Rule came out? And, again, stick it out, find ways to grow. The pendulum swings back the other way. Look where we are today with that situation.
100%. 100%. I love it. My final thoughts, you guys, again, I think this is a situation, it's very, very similar to the saying of when there's blood in the streets, in the stock market, that's when you buy, right? That's when you really make your moves. When there's fear and there's blood in the streets and people are losing, that's when there's a lot of opportunity and you can come in and actually make a big jump, a big gain. Is there risk here? If you're a Virginia agent and you are going to try to go all in, you're going to buy a book of business in the middle of some of this chaos. Is there a risk here? Absolutely there is. But there's also, there's no risk, no reward. So I think there's this kind of, there's a leverage piece of that risk where I don't think it's a high risk. There is some risk here, but I see a path forward in Virginia where you might be able to grow your book significantly. And then when this hospital network comes to the table, which I 100% believe they will, just like Christian shared that story of the Utah hospital network. I think most of these hospital networks, it has to do with dollars and cents. I think they all want to try to make this work for both sides if that contract can get signed. So, and then you can start to work with some of these big national carriers again, and now all of a sudden your book is 3 times the size it was. And now you're able to make that much more money. I mean, it's a huge opportunity. It really is. And I love that kind of 180 that this whole thing took. And part of that is, I think, Christian Mind's mindset too, though. It does kind of come back to a mindset thing, you guys, because it'd be so easy to look at this news, especially, again, if you're a local agent in Virginia and you're just like, I can't even write anymore. There's nothing to write. The doctors don't want anything that I can write. I'm done. I'm terminating my license. You could do that, and you could feel good about it. You could tell your friends and family, the contracts are gone. I've got to stop selling Medicare. I'm going to have to do something else. Like, you could go that route, but there's also another option here where you look at this as an opportunity and you grow your business. So those are my final thoughts. Wild episode today. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Some ups and downs here from the beginning.
So many topics, so many things we covered today.
We sure did.
A lot to talk about. we spend a few days apart and the things pile up. That's typically, that's what I would say is the moral of the story at the end of episode 93. Guys, appreciate you watching all the way to the end. You are amazing. We definitely appreciate your support. We just broke 5,000 downloads on our audio only platforms, such as Apple Podcast, Spotify. Of course, that's not all platforms. Doesn't include YouTube, doesn't include Facebook, doesn't include LinkedIn, doesn't include X, amongst others. But we certainly appreciate your support. Thank you. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe on the YouTube channel. We're closing in on 100 subscribers. We're very close. Appreciate your support there. 7 Figures or Bust podcast YouTube channel. Make sure to comment on the live stream in the Facebook group or the replay for a chance to be entered into Freebie Friday. Make sure to give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. We certainly would appreciate it. And subscribe on Spotify and Apple Podcast. We'll see you guys on the next one. Here's to your massive success. Thanks, everybody.